All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hello, Leigh Anne. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for Leigh Anne. Today, she did a really big thing. Do you want to tell us what it is, Leigh Anne?
I will tell you what it is. So I posted my first YouTube video, and this was something that I didn't even know was going to be a thing because I haven't been very involved in YouTube outside of just watching, watching the people that I subscribe to. And so I didn't really necessarily consider myself like ever having a YouTube channel, but over the course of the last month, definitely, probably the last 2 months overall, I was kind of getting this idea that like I have a lot of information and I just don't know how to package it. And Carly in my communications with her had like you'd given me these list of questions that just reframed how I thought about packaging what I know. And I was like, oh, as a matter of fact, these are all things that I love to talk about. And this is the trend for the things that I love. And so I literally 2 days ago decided to make a YouTube channel, and the channel is called Sparking New Perspectives because my favorite thing to talk about is like the things that have shifted my perspective on life, because I'm very much a proponent of when you change the way that you see the world changes. And so like I had a couple of real moments when I was like reading through your questions where I was like, these are things that just like changed my life. So I made the video, I recorded it yesterday, and I told myself this morning I'm gonna post it. We're just gonna do it. Like, beers be damned. And it was so much easier and more fun than I was expecting. And it was so much more like energetically giving. Like I was just really like ramping myself up into this creative space. And I've been in other creative spaces before. So this is just a really new and exciting and energetic and fun experience that I've not had. Like this is the kind of thing that I always imagined finding. This idea that like when I watch your videos, Carly, like you just seem so energetically into it. You're like, I'm here for this. I could do this all day, and it seems to just generate the next video and the next video after that. Like you've got this energy for it. And this morning when I posted, that was kind of the first time that I felt that, where I was like, actually, this feels really good and I enjoyed it and I want to get more into it and try new things. So yeah, that was the morning's experience, the
Dude.
newest domino of my day.
Dude, congratulations. Like in the whole journey of sharing our gifts, I feel like that first step, the very first video, the making of the YouTube channel, the posting, right? The pressing of the publish button, like those are the hardest parts. And if you can get past those first couple steps, I mean, it is literally all downhill from there. And I love what you said about it's energy giving. Like when I think about my channel and the videos I make, I'm doing it because it gives me energy. There's a lot of people thanking me for my work, and I appreciate that. Trust me, can't hear it enough. But I made it because it gave me life to do it. Like when I'm sitting in the room all by myself talking on the thing, like that's fun. And I definitely notice when it's been a while since I recorded a video, I'm like, oh, I'm like itching for it. And that's because it gives me life force energy or like gives me an outlet to let it flow. Maybe not exactly sure. Doesn't matter. It's energizing.
I absolutely get that. And I did. I actually had a thought this morning that I was like, I want to record another video. Like, I know, I know, I know. It's been astounding to me because I don't think I was expecting it. Again, having tried other creative ventures, this is really the first time that, I've done a couple of different Instagram pages, Facebook pages, like just kind of being creative and getting out there. And this is the first one where I'm really feeling the energy coming back to me and like me being excited about the topics.
Mm.
So it's new territory, but I feel like February has been a whole bunch of new territory.
Right?
So
Let's backtrack a little bit. So Leigh Anne and I met here, was it January 30th, I think was the date of
yeah,
your session. So not quite a month ago. It's been like three and a half
yeah.
weeks. and met through one of the free activation sessions that I've been doing a bunch of lately. Got to meet so many people that are around this community, and that has been so fun. Um, and it's hard to believe, Leigh Anne, that that was only 3.5 weeks ago. So let's back up to that and talk a little bit about, well, and I guess I also want to mention that Leigh Anne's application got submitted like November 7th, I want to say. So it was even like a few months ago that she submitted the application, and then we had the session all in divine timing. Every single one of these has been. But yeah, what was your thought process on going ahead and applying for this session? What was your experience of the session? Kind of share any of that that comes up.
Well, I will say that like the end of October, beginning of November was such a uh, like for those who know tarot, it was like hardcore tower moments, just moment after moment of just like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, where do I want me to go? And I had come across a coach, a life coach, transformational life coach that like she spoke to me. She explained to me all of the experiences and growth that I had had in like the last 2 years, especially. She she basically told me what it was that I had been doing, and I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a process for it. So I didn't really know how to explain it to others. And hearing her talk about it, I was just blown away. And my thought was, I want to do this. And I was in grad school at the time. And so it was just such a conflicting thought to be like, this has nothing to do with my current material. Like, this is definitely a divergent path. How do I want to handle this? And so I went through a lot of like mental reframing of who I was and what I wanted to be. And so when I came across the activation session application, I had just been scrolling YouTube and I saw it and I was just like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I'm in the market for change and growth, and I don't know what this is, but it's free and I would love some feedback. So let's do it. And I had no idea what it was going to be about. I was just like, activation session sounds cool. Let's
Right.
do it. Yeah. So I think honestly, looking back on it, there was a willingness to accept help at that moment, which I'd only just been thinking about like as I was reflecting on my process that got me to this moment. Like that was an ask for help there that I was just like, I want input and communication and another person to like hear and reflect my story. Like that is like I'm here for it, like and I know we've talked about this, the fact that like I'm just really hyper independent. My ability to ask for help, let alone receive it, like extremely difficult process. So in reflection, that was a really open moment for me where I was like, I absolutely would accept help and am like willing to receive whatever comes from this. So it was a
Mm.
really, really open and vulnerable moment for me. And writing out the activation form was in itself activating, actually,
Say a little bit more
because
about that because that's part of the magic of the sauce that's not exactly on the face of the process. But yeah, tell us about that.
okay, so there was one question, like as I was reading your questions and answering them, some of the value of being asked a question is literally just creating clarity around what it is that you think about a thing. So a lot of it was kind of clarifying for me, especially in a space where I was like on in uncharted territory, essentially, like where do I want to go and what do I want to do. And so as I was going through, I was kind of solidifying the future vision of me that I want to create. So total transition phase. But there was one question in particular that really had me stop and think. And I was like, gosh, what do I want? So the question was something along the lines of, if you had no fear of failure, if your fear of failure was unplugged, what would you do? And in receiving that question, hearing it, my thought process was, how far could I go? How many people could I reach? How big do I want to be? Right? Like, what do I want my impact to be? And that really was the question that solidified for me that like I absolutely want to go into transformational coaching. I absolutely want to be someone who can help others experience what I've experienced. But in that question of impact, I was really realizing how much of an impact I could actually make. And honestly, the value of even one person and the impact that can make. So since then, I've been really focused on, helping the people in my vicinity. Who do I know? Like, who are my friends? They call, they're like, hey, this is what's going on in my life. And I'm thinking, how can I help transform the way that they're thinking about this? How can I help them to get where they want to go? What even is coaching and how do I want to incorporate that into my life? So it was the fear of failure question, especially because I do have a fear of failure, like being able to let that go and say, where are my limits? And the only limits I have are the ones I place, which is interesting in itself because just reading the answer to that question, I was kind of like, yeah, actually, I'm saying that this is where I want to go and this is as big as I can imagine right now. But I imagine once I get there, I'll have a bigger frame of reference for the next steps. So that was just really eye-opening to me to be like, I can do quite a bit if I let go of that fear of failure.
Yeah, dude, I freaking love that. And that is one of my favorite questions to get to read people's responses. And there's a saying that is, we reach for the highest branch we can see. And so it's really interesting to like look at, when you take all the data from all the applications that I've gotten and how most people are able to say that like, oh yeah, this thing that's on the other side of my fear and I could do that if, if my fear of failure was unplugged. And there are some people who can't see anything over there. It's like they're so wrapped in their fear that like they're like, I really don't know. Like they can't even imagine setting the fear of failure to the side. And like my heart goes out to you because it's just a thought exercise, right? Like nothing is
Yeah.
happening. Like just in your mind, you're just imagining, like, what if you weren't scared of that thing? And not everybody can even get there, Like,
I hear that. And I think one of my favorite perspective shifts from the concept of coaching was literally this idea that a coach sees more for you than you can see for yourself. They see how big you can become. They hold that space, this extra space. So you're just like this, little seed, and they've got that space. They see how far you can go, and they are holding it and calling you forth to grow. Like, there's an element of fear that just feels like a fence and you can't look over it and you don't know what's there. But for the people who are willing to, be there for you and hold that space for you and say yes to you in spaces where you want to grow, like those are the people that really allow you to become more. And I was definitely looking for, those relationships myself. It's like you don't need to be a coach to hold that kind of space for someone. And as a matter of fact, to me, that is the essence of, love right there, that you can say, I see how great you can be and I support you however you want to move. Your greatness exists,
mhm.
like holding that larger space. And I've really taken that to my relationships and friendships too, to be able to say like, you are capable of great things and I will never limit you. If you need more space for me to hold my arms wider open, I will move my arms to give you more space.
Yeah, all the best ones will. Okay. And if somebody in your life isn't willing to do that for you, like it's just a matter of who do you want to choose to spend your time with, right? Like the most important habit are the five people we spend the most time with, and we become those people. So if somebody else isn't willing to open up that space for you, chances are like your own willingness to open up your own space for yourself is also going to be limited. So I love that you were like on the market for that. Like I want someone who can see more than what I can see, and I want to hear what is that? Show me. Show me, and even, invite me there. And yeah.
And I think not just speaking to, you're the five people that you're around the most, you're also the social media that you intake. Like I changed the intake, I changed who I listened to, I changed the books that I was reading, and it was changing the way that I was speaking, the way that I was thinking. So there's so much influence out there. And I'm sure plenty of people have heard that concept that you are what you eat. And it's like you are what you see, you are what you hear, you are what you, like it's everything that you
Yeah.
intake and not just
Yes.
food.
Yes.
But I think that also speaks to the activation session itself, that when I actually got into it, I felt the openness of space. Like from the concept of, the coach being there just to create the space, like I felt unlimited in the space that you had created. So when I walked in, you were kind of like, hey, tell me about yourself. And I was like, here is all of this room for me to sculpt, in front of this person, the kind of person that I am, like who am I? And here's what's going to come out. But like there was endless space for me to be able to define, like, this is where I'm at and this is my process right now. So I felt that openness and that was wonderful.
Cool. I love that. It is unlimited. And I've told Leigh Anne this many times, but like I feel like one of the things that is one of my gifts is that there are very few limitations that stand in front of me, between me and what I want. And so when I want something, I just go and get it and have it. And that's not always true. I mean, I have fears just like everybody else does, but generally I don't hold myself back very much. And I am finding that like that gift is givable. Like through these activation sessions, through the questions that I ask based on the listening that I do, um, you know, I am able to maybe not remove the limitation for the person, but definitely shine a light. Like, do you realize that you're telling this story that you want this thing and that you can't have it? And usually they're like, oh, like, oh, I didn't even realize that that was there. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now that you're aware of it, what do you want to do? Do you want to leave it there or do you want to choose to do something different? And again, like that's all up to the person. Like I just am kind of shining a flashlight on these things.
And I think this speaks to a conversation that we had in Sacred Circle about this idea of a glass box. And you don't know that you're in the box. You're feeling the confines of the box, and the box is the fear. So, you're like, oh, I want to post this video. Oh, hit the box. I can't. There's, fear on the other side of that. Can't do that. But at some point, you grow to the point where like all you feel is the fear because you know you need to step out of it. And part of the value of you shining the light is you showing me the box that says, oh, this is where I'm stopping myself, and this is my potential if I decide not to stop myself. And or like here's this little step that still gets you closer to the goal. It makes you, gives you this level of empowerment to like, actually I can do this, one, and two, there are more ways than I originally envisioned to be able to do this thing. There are definitely experiences that I've had where I'm realizing, as a matter of fact, my end goal of X has 20 different paths to get to it. And all I realized was I wanted this path, but that's not the only path. So I think that's a really eye-opening experience when you recognize that there are ways for you to get what you want that may not be visible to you because you're focused on this singular way of getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to your point, like our own perspective is naturally limiting. Like, I think that's true for every single person because you can only see what you can see. And that's a function of your programming, the programming that you got when you got here in childhood, and any of the additional reprogramming that you've done on yourself to like widen out the view of what you can see. But that's the beauty of bouncing it back and forth with another person is that their perspective is different from yours. And so chances are, hopefully, they're going to have at least a spark or a question or an idea or something that lets you see, like, that lets your perspective widen out that much more.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think, one of the reasons they say that, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Sounds
Like,
horrible.
there's so much to learn from
Yeah.
other people. And I will say, from like that quote specifically, I realized that I preferred to be the smartest person in the room because that fed, my fear. It essentially like made me feel more comfortable and like I know the things. So once I realized it, it was like, well, actually, I'm okay with learning. I think I had a fear around being seen learning because that was some form of failure then on my part that I had to account for.
Mhm.
But having access to people that know more than I do or have had completely different experiences and have solved their problems in completely different ways bring that perspective of you could try this if you considered this. And it's like, actually, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that this source over here existed.
Right.
Like, thank you for opening my eyes because now that's what I want to do.
Right.
You
Right.
just don't know until you encounter it. It's one of the most interesting facts about life that like the more you expose yourself to, the more you recognize what's out there, but there's always a limitless amount of stuff. Like you will never ever reach the point where you know all the things.
Right. Like, I don't even think that's possible. And I think, if anything, I actually saw a meme this morning that was like the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset says, I know everything. And at that point, or like even to say that something is impossible, that's not possible for me. Like that's a fixed mindset. And I hear that a lot in these activation sessions of like, that's what shifts is like, wow, something that I thought was impossible is now actually just right there, on the other side of like the ways that I'm choosing to limit myself. And so making the impossible possible is really exciting for me personally, as far as like getting to show up and like do my work, like give my gifts. I'm like, fuck yeah, like making the impossible possible. Heck yes. Um, but yeah, I wonder like what stands out that you remember most from the activation session or the sacred circle as far as like those perspective shifting moments?
I had such so there's two. There's one for the activation session, there's one for Sacred Circle. So in the activation session, I remember like we had gotten on the topic of money, which like was definitely I think the topic that I needed to be on. And after communicating with you, I just remember like you had reflected so well and I had just really taken it in like you were bringing in this curiosity and I was like yes that's what I want. I like this curiosity of like why is it that I have this relationship with money, why is it that I react this way when we talk about finances, why? And I was really appreciating the levity that we were creating in that conversation. So when I went into the session there was kind of a heaviness around money that I don't know that I recognized, and by the time I was out of the session, what I was excited about was diving into all of my concerns about money. Like, why am I concerned? Like, why does this thing really pop out of me? Why does, this financial issue trigger me? And after the session, I was like so motivated and like my brain was so full that I immediately went to go journal. And I kid you not, I journaled like 10 pages because like I just need to get this out. Like, I don't even know what all of this is yet. Like, God, let's just sit and decipher it. And I spent the next week after that just on a roller coaster of emotion because I was getting so triggered by like the fact that I was willing to dive into it, but then I like would freak out at everything that I was seeing and I would like avoid it for the next day. So one day I would be like, I'm going to do this. This is going to be great. I'm curious. I want to know the things. I'm going to journal. And then shit would show up and I was like, holy shit, and freak out the next day. Like the next day was just all fears. I was just like, these are all the like, I'm worried that I won't have this. I'm worried that I won't be able to take care of myself here. And then I would be in an awareness enough by the end of the day to have realized I spent my day in fear and I don't want to keep doing that. So the following day, I would go back in and say, okay, we're going back to, journaling about this. We're going back into evaluating this. And so it really was for that first week after the session, like I was up and motivated, and then I was down in fear, and then I was up and motivated. And eventually it did balance out. I got to the point where I was cycling through the fears so consistently and seeing the pattern to the extent that I was like, I don't want to keep doing this. I know that those fears exist, but they're not going to control me. And this is how I want to feel. And from that point forward, it got a little easier because I was like, there's this fear is only doing me so much good. And after, 7 or 8 days of riding the roller coaster, I was like, I'm kind of done. Like, I might vomit. I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
So it was really eye-opening the amount of energy that I came out with just to like be willing to dive into the stuff. And it was big stuff. And that's why it was so triggering. And I remember you saying in the session, in the activation session, that you're like, I don't think you realize how big this is and how much is going to come from this. And I was with you. I was like, yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
totally. You're like, I have no clue.
Like, girl, you're so right. And then like the following week where like I was in it and out of like, I don't think I even would have had the brain power to process that comment. Like I can process it now because I'm past it. But that was a lot of information and a lot of fears that I just been like hiding from myself. Like I don't want to look at this because it's gonna be hard. But when you find yourself motivated to do it, that's the time when you need to do it. And I was like, all right, we are here in this moment. I am curious. I am full of love and compassion for myself, and I'm excited to be on the other side of it. And so that's honestly like at the end of the activation session, that's where I was. I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. And what was the phrase that you had used? You're like, the block's been there for a reason. I literally wrote that in my journal as like the first thing on my page of, money journaling. I was like, the block has been here for a reason so that, when we run into the stuff that's really big, like we know that it's big. It's been there, it's going to take some time to sort out, have compassion.
Yeah. Be
That
gentle,
was,
please.
yeah.
That was, I remember that. That was like the last thing I told you was like, it, we repress what we cannot process in our psyche. Like when we're not capable, it goes in the shadow. And so nothing in the shadow is gonna be easy to unpack. Okay. So, like the
Yeah.
fact though that you let it come out, like that, again, I take that as such a testimonial to the session itself and the space and the safety that was there of like, we can look at all of this. We can explore what you want that you're not living yet. We can explore the limiting ideas that are in the way of why you're not living it yet. Like we can look at all this because again, it's just a mental exercise at this point.
It is. And I think that honestly, that levity and lightheartedness with that topic specifically was exactly what I needed to pop into. Like I needed that energy to be able to say, I don't need to make this heavy. And that's honestly what I kept coming back to when I got motivated is it's like it's me who's bogging this down. And so I want to figure out why I'm bogging it down and what's bogging it down. And every time I found myself in the lower space, it was the energy of levity that I wanted to bring back, this lightheartedness of like, let's just go back to being curious. Like, let's, the fears are there, right? But that doesn't have to stop me from learning those fears. And so again, it like pulled me out and back into a place where I wanted to look. And that honestly was the energy that I needed to be like drawing on as I found myself in the lower spaces. It brought me back up. And again, the cycle, I personally believe like the cycle is necessary because I wasn't clear on it. That's why I kept going through it, right? Like I recognized the challenge and the hurt. I can't tell you how many tears I cried or how painful it was, but I know I've mentioned this to you before. Like everybody talks about the action being the big thing when you're trying to change a habit, when you're trying to change a pattern. And for me, it's the observation, the seeing of the thing for me is the biggest step. And the reason in my eyes that that cycle continued was because there were things about it that I didn't see yet. And so I kept experiencing it until it was really clear to me exactly what I was doing that got me down and exactly what I was doing that got me back up. And like once I saw it, it was like, okay, this is no longer a process that I need to complete. I've done the work and I can see why I'm getting triggered to go that low. And I can put in some safeguards to help me process so that I don't hit those lows again. And that's when it started becoming easier that I was able to see what was triggering me to begin with and how I was handling the triggers and just changing the way I was handling the triggers.
Yeah.
So
Like what we
Super.
make it mean is another piece that we explore a lot in the activation sessions of like, what does it mean that this is really hard for you? What does it mean that, your abundance is blocked? What does it mean that, and again, it's incredible the stories that are on loop that it again, it's the glass box. Like you just, it's so normal you don't even see it. And so again, telling your story to somebody else, like I think about one of them that wasn't yours, but like I asked her questions, asked her questions, asked her questions. Every single story started with unfortunately, and then she would tell me a story. And then the next one, unfortunately, and then she would tell me a story. And then unfortunately, and then she would tell me a story. And so by the end of it, I'm like, do you realize that you started about five stories with the word unfortunately? She's like, yeah, I picked up on that. Like, just the act of telling your story out loud can be so illuminating. And I think so often people think, like, let me figure it out and then I'll tell somebody. And it's like, if as long as you stay in your head, like, you can't break that loop that is so normal for you. So the act of verbalizing it, whether I reflect it back to you or not, like, I mean, you could literally tell your story to yourself and probably still gain clarity that you didn't have just by keeping it inside of your head.
I think that's a true value of journaling too, for the people who don't
For
like to
sure.
talk to others. Um, I have definitely been hearing about journaling like for the past 5 to 7 years and only really started it in the past 3 months and maybe 6 months actually. I think I started it back in like September. But up until that point, I didn't really see the value of it. And I was really at the point where I wanted to like, we're just gonna give it a good old college try.
See what this journaling thing's all about. Yeah.
Right? Like I had so many like blocks around journaling, but I was like, we're just gonna give it a shot. And one of the first things I noticed actually was you journal how you need to journal, and there's no rules around journaling. And my favorite experience, I don't even remember how I came to this conclusion, but I had journaled enough at that point, just like randomly off and on, to the point where what I was enjoying about journaling was that I would just keep writing until I felt better. And so I open the journal when I don't feel good, and then I keep going until I feel better. And it's just a processing implementation. So that was amazing because then I was like, wait a second, if I open this book, write some stuff in it, really think through and just let my mind go with all the possibilities, don't limit myself. Like, don't stop myself from saying the things that I'm thinking. Like if I am open enough with myself to be able to write this down, no matter how ugly it is, I will get to the other side because one sentence follows the next. Eventually you process it. And by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I'm coming out of this. I feel better. Life is gonna be okay. Like this is good. And the other thing I was seeing is specifically related to the alternative of talking to someone is like, here I am processing and seeing the words that I'm using and seeing how unhappy XYZ was actually making me. And so, whether or not I talk to someone else about it, I'm seeing this pattern for myself now. This is not an okay experience. I was upset about this, and a boundary needs to be put in place, or, whatever the solution needs to be in order for me to take a step that is in care of me.
Yeah.
So that was surprisingly enlightening. And now I journal all the time. I'm just like, ooh, here's this cute quote, and it's like my favorite thing right now. So like everything goes in it now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's definitely a necessary way to reflect back to yourself what it is that you're thinking.
Yes.
But to your point, like having someone to actually say the words out loud, I do personally like I tend to choose my words carefully and deliberately. Sometimes I have no filter. So, you take what you got. But when I'm meeting someone new, I do tend to be more aware of exactly what it is that I'm showing, exactly what it is that I'm saying. And that awareness is just as important to me as like meeting the person because here I am seeing like, oh, this was how I introduced myself. And I don't know that I still want to introduce myself that way. Like, how am I identifying myself? Oh, hi, I'm Leigh Anne and I have XYZ job, right? That's not how I want to, like, hi, I'm Leigh Anne and like I live for tarot. Like, okay, it's an entirely different way of framing who you want to be. So being able to like express that to a stranger is an opportunity, an open opportunity to be who you want to be, have an honest conversation about what you want.
Yeah.
and like let it fly, just see where it goes.
Yeah, you got nothing to lose. Like for
Yeah.
real. Like try it on and see. I also wanted to ask, I want to come back after this to the sacred circle moment that shifted your
Okay.
perspective. We're going to get there. But I want to ask, what was it like for you to rewatch your session? Like watch the recording? And let me tell you, while you think about it for a second, like it blows my mind that the majority of the sessions I've done, the person didn't watch the recording. And I personally am just like blown away that, like, why wouldn't you? And so I really do want to know, like, you know, if you're somebody who had a session and didn't watch the recording, enlighten me, first of all. And second of all, what did you get out of like taking the time to like go back and click up the recording and watch it? What was that
So I will say personally
like?
that there's a level of self-love that I needed. I needed to be at a specific level in order to watch myself because for the longest time, I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I sounded. And that has grown over time. So I think back to when I first started Instagram and I wasn't even posting pictures of my face. It was like song lyrics and things that I just thought were creative. And I got to the point where I started posting pictures of my face. And that was like the way of me accepting and loving myself is like, here's this face that is mine that I'm willing to put out there. And from doing that a number of times, I really grew to love myself and my face and my body. And like from that point forward, it was like, okay, let's do videos because I don't like the way I sound. So like that was a step forward for me too, where I was like, all of a sudden I'm doing reels on Instagram and I was like, ugh, cringe. I hate the way I sound. But again, with the learning to love it, it's discomfort. Like it's an uncomfortable experience until it becomes normal. And so for me to watch the video of me in my eyes, it's an acceptance of myself and like enjoy. Like I honestly enjoyed watching the video. I was like, God, freaking cute. Like
I
I
mean,
am happy.
that's where I'm at is like, dude, look at me go. Look at me saying the things. And like, I didn't even know I was going to say that. And she asked me, and I was like, wow, there it is. Like, I get so much every single coaching session I've ever had where I'm the one being coached by somebody
Mhm.
else. Like, I've rewatched it at least once, if not a couple of times, to like, I feel like that's a huge part of like really letting it sink in and the integration. But I think you're most likely dead on as far as like what would keep somebody out of that experience is like they literally can't look at themselves or listen to themselves. And that pulls at my
Or they're
heartstrings a little bit.
worried about because again, this is me. Like, because that's definitely my experience was like I needed a certain level of self-love to start watching myself on a video. And I also needed a level of self-love related to me as a human being. The thoughts that I was going to have, are expressed there. If there were moments that I was cringing at myself, then I don't, like those are uncomfortable to watch. So, can you accept what it is that you're going to say in that moment? Can you accept, even if it wasn't the right way that you organized the words or even what you meant to say, can you accept that it just happened? And I feel like that's a new element from a thought perspective, like accepting your brain for being the way it is, for responding the way that it did. Like that's a new level of self-love there too, to be able to look at your video and say, it's okay that I said those things. They are recorded, yes, but like that is how my brain responded in that moment, and I am okay with that. And so when I was rewatching the video, I was having a blast. I didn't think I was going to have as much fun as I did, but like I was like, there were a couple moments. It's like I don't remember. I remember being asked the questions. I remember the general gist of how I responded, but I couldn't remember how I phrased it. And so I was like, really, like, what did I say? Like, I know I said
Leaning
something.
in on yourself.
Like, yeah, was I actually like remembering that correctly? Like, what was that? Um, so I had a couple of just really like staring at the screen, kind of smiling because I was like, yep, that's about right. Like just total acceptance, like, yeah, that was. But I think before I watched the video, my takeaway from the session itself had a couple of like core points. Going back to rewatch actually enlightened me in terms of all of the details that we had discussed. And interestingly, all of those details, and I know I wrote it in um, the survey too, like all of the details that I spotted that were relevant to me and important to me are things that have progressed since the activation session. Like I know I've talked about, community. It's like I vaguely recalled talking about community when because my grandma had just passed when I had the activation with you. I had this amazing experience with my family that weekend of her funeral. And it was just such a present, in the moment, loving, wonderful experience of just like a couple of days of not worrying about anything. And it was such a good feeling to just be surrounded by the people that I loved and to just know in the next moment, like, it's not relevant. We're here now, and I'm here with my people now, and we're enjoying now. And so that I actually did not remember. So I love that I had the opportunity to go back and read it because I was like, that's absolutely what I want to create in my life on a daily basis. That was a reminder to me of, hey, girl, like this is what you're working towards. This is the world you want to create for yourself. You want to go into these days having, no worries and, being present with the people that you love and spending that time with people that you love. Like make those appointments, hang out with those people, be in the moment.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple of things where, like, yes, that's right on par. That's what I expected. That's what I remember. And there were a couple of things where I was like, actually, this was really important to me. How could I have forgotten that? I'm so glad I went back and rewatched.
Yeah. Which I think the pieces that we take from it are the ones that, like, that's what we need right here, right now, and like first things first kind of thing. And then also the timing of the rewatch is most likely guided by divine timing as well, as far as like, okay, and now you're ready to add these pieces. And it's fascinating how, like, that's why I say a lot of them I've watched even more than once, my coaching sessions, because as I integrate and as I work through like the pieces that I had, and then I rewatch it and I work through those pieces, and then you watch it again, it's like it just keeps giving you the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. Like there's so much value from the recording that, yeah, so it was surprising to me that that's like not more of a common practice.
I absolutely agree with that. I can't remember who said it that really just changed the way that I intook information. I was always someone who wanted to like I'm a perfectionist. I believe that I need to know all of the things. And when I watch a video of any sort that is knowledgeable, I'm like, I need to intake all of it. And that's not realistic. But that was, my general mindset. And I struggled watching YouTube videos, informational YouTube videos, because I always, at the end of it, and this took some processing for me to figure out, I'm always thinking, I need to know all of this. I need to intake all of it. And at one point, I made the realization, I can't remember who it was. I think it was like a crochet video. And the conversation was around what you can expect to intake at the level that you are at. When you are like, so I'll give crochet as the example, but when you are just learning crochet and you are looking at the videos, you're going to take away what's going to help you in that moment. You are a level one and you need the level one tips and tricks. And like there might be level two, three, and four tips and tricks hidden in that video, but what you're taking away is level one. And if you rewatch that video once you are more practiced, you will be taking away different things. And
Yeah.
so, same experience to like you watching and me rewatching our own videos is like I see the things that are relevant to me now, and if I rewatch it later, I'm going to see the things that are relevant to future me at that time.
Exactly. 100%. Like I've mentioned to you many times and on the channel several times as well, but like I've been watching Kathy Heller content and like letting her wash my brain. And I watched them all of her videos that are only her. I've now been through them all once and I'm going back through. Oh, I already saw that. I already heard that story. Doesn't matter because me today, I'm different than I was 3 weeks ago when I listened to that video for the first time. So the video itself is new because I am new. So, like, I mean, there's depth. If you find something that you like and you want to like tune your vibration to it, I mean, repetition can be a very helpful concept. Not everybody can handle that level of repetition, but like when there's something I want to absorb, just over and over and over and over and over. And then you get it and then you absorb it. Because, yeah, one time through, you're only going to get what is a reflection of you right here, right now, today. And that's okay. That's always going to be the way. And then if you want more, you can go back and get more.
And I do think that, like, from my perspective, what I appreciate about repetition, because I do also go back and rewatch videos. I rewatch the ones where I'm like, that was a lot, and I know I'm going to want more from this later. And I always find value in the cementing of the level one ideas, whatever it was that I hit in the beginning, that first watch through. It always comforts me to hear it again because, again, that concept of planting it in your memory, the more you hear it, the more it sticks. And so the level one concepts I do want to keep. And it's really comforting to me to go back and re-listen and just reabsorb the things that I already knew. And in some ways I do hear them in a completely new way. And in some ways it's just a cementing of what already made sense to me. But it makes it easier for me to pull that knowledge when I'm talking to someone else. Then I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember, the concept of Kathy Heller and, the elephant that always sticks with me, the elephant on the pole. And I'm like, those are moments that are just valuable for me to pull when I'm trying to explain to someone, my perspective on the situation. Like, you can go beyond as far as your tether pulls you. Like, you can go
Yeah.
farther.
Yeah.
So valuable to repeat, I think, in some scenarios.
Well, and repetition is how we learn. Like, how did you learn the ABCs? How did you learn how to count to 100? Did you do it once and you were perfect? Probably not. We did the ABCs and I got up to J, and then I'm going to do it again and I got to P this time. And like, you just build on what you learned. And so that concept makes total sense when we're 4 or 5 years old learning the ABCs. But when we get to adulthood, we don't always give ourselves that grace. So thank you for indulging me in that conversation. And now
Totally
let's
support it.
hear let's hear the sacred circle moment that sparked your new perspective.
So this was it was a reflection. So the other one of the other girls that was with us, I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name, so I won't, but um in our conversation, we had been talking about, and me specifically, I had been talking about this idea that, masculine versus feminine energy in creation, and the idea that the feminine has all of these ideas, creative spark, the energy. Masculine is the one taking action and doing the things. And in masculine action, there is safety for the feminine. And I said that. And I was like, yeah, that's so smart. And like, I appreciate that perspective, right? But it was interesting that I didn't appreciate it or remember it to the same effect or experience it to the same effect until the other girl was like reading it back to me. And I was like, oh my God, that's genius. Like, that is so, like, it settled with me in an entirely new way when it was reflected back to me. So the conversation that we had been having, all of a sudden, like, in a whole new way, a whole new perspective, I was like reabsorbing that information that I just seemed to have like leaked out and forgotten. So that was like a really like profound moment for me, and it highlights for me personally the reason that I am looking for a community and found that community in Sacred Circle, to have people who want to help me further, my journey, who I also want to help them further their journey. Like this exchange of energy that can just be excited and interested, lighthearted, and really something that like I get energy from it. As much energy as I give, I get energy from it. And so that kind of community, to have found it, like, that just excites me because those were the people that I was looking for. Like, I was looking for my peeps, right? And like
Right
I just
here.
I'm so grateful to have found it because, I think I mentioned this to you, like, I wasn't sure what I was looking for at the time, and things just kind of appear on your path when you're ready to accept them. And this was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, actually, this was what I needed. I need the people that can help me and be excited for me when I'm too nervous to like do it on my own. Like, that's the energy that I need to intake. And like, they're excited, they see this in me, I can do it. And for me to be able to like offer that same thing in response, like, yes, you can absolutely break beyond the boundaries of what you know to be true.
Mm. I gotta say, like that feature of like, it's a very interactive space. Like we bounce around to everybody. I mean, it's not just me sitting there talking for 90 minutes. Like, thank heavens, there's plenty of videos on my channel where if you want to listen to me talk, there's you just eat your heart out. But in the sacred circle, it is like a sharing of everybody's perspective. Here's what I offer, here's what you offer, here's what I get from that, here's what I get from that. Like it's very like intermixing, like a swirling of energy and like an alchemy that takes place. And in that session, you both said things that like each one of you had to stop and like write it down. And I love that, it's not about me showing up and making it happen as far as like, oh, I need to say like the most brilliant thing. Like, no, like I'm literally just holding open a space. And then what you offer, she's over there like, I mean, that action is safety thing blew her freaking mind. And I'm only saying that because she told me after the sacred circle was over, she's like, wow, again, like that was huge. And she
One more time.
commented on the recording. She was back in there watching the recording yesterday and left a comment about how it took like a week and a half of that really sinking in and her like kind of working through some things with that idea. And then yesterday, like, took this action that had been months in the making. And the reason she was able to like kind of push into that taking action part was because you said that. And so the way that, like, oh, here's a random thought I just thought of, masculines like this and feminines like this. And you changed her life. Like, it's incredible to me that again, like I'm like looking at it like, wow, like I didn't even do anything except start the Zoom and like everybody's welcome there. And then you all help each other. It is such like a pouring into each other. It is so freaking cool
But you
to see.
chose the music that we listened to that sparked the thought, like it's a group effort. And I am a huge believer in like the right things that need or the things that need to get said are the things that need to get said. The things that need to get heard are the things that need to get heard. And so just to be in a room full of people who are also of that mindset where it's like we are going to take from this what we need, we are going to give what others might need in this scenario, and that's the exchange. Like
Yeah.
it's a fun and it is like just interactive and interesting to hear other people's perspectives. And I do find it interesting that like she and I were on like that same trajectory, interesting, like this creative trajectory of trying something new that we've never done before and being nervous about next steps. So like I was really vibing with where she was and what she had on her plate and what her concerns were. And I valued your questions as well because there was just so much that I was trying to think through as you were asking those questions. So again, with that concept of clarity, when you ask the right questions, you get into a new space. And mentally, I was jumping into new spaces, and there was a part of me that like really wanted to be there. And in some ways, what I was hearing was more confirmation. And in other ways, it was like, here's this entirely new way of thinking of something that had not occurred to me before now. So that's, a pathway that I want to take.
Yeah.
So I remember some of your questions just being like really eye-opening for me. That one question about why is perfectionism important? Like it just blows my mind that I was like, why is it important? What a good question. I know it's important because my fear tells me it's important. Why do I believe that it's important? And so like that really reframed how much importance I give to perfection and the fact that like when I want to take action, there is value to it and there is limitation to it. And I do not want it to be a limiting factor for me.
Yeah.
So that was a really powerful question. I know I've told you that before. I'm about to tell you again that like it has changed the way Kathy Heller in her 20 seconds of courage, like there's that moment where I'm like, perfection. Okay, we're gonna click the publish button anyway. Like, here we go.
Well, because like I told you, if there's something wrong with it, somebody will tell you. If it's not perfect, they'll tell you. And what even is perfect? Because perfect by your
Yep.
standards is not perfect by my standards or Joe's
So true.
standards or Billy Bob's standards, like, And your version of perfect might be so far above and beyond what's actually needed. Like there's just so many reasons why perfection is kind of an illusion. And so, yeah, like that was, but that only comes about because we heard what you were willing to share. How like this is what I want, and this is the back and forth where like I find myself kind of stuck a little bit. Like I think it was your Etsy listing that you were talking about of like, I have it, it's drafted, but the email's not perfect, and this isn't perfect, and this isn't perfect, and I want to get this more perfect first. And I just was sitting there like, that's a lot of perfect. Like, why is that so important to you? Clearly, you're valuing it.
Yeah.
Why? So yeah, I mean, I feel like we've really highlighted like the value of community in general, the value of like reflection and being
And
willing to share.
and having someone that can question your beliefs. I think, for some people that is a challenge they're not ready for, and I understand and support that. I am in a space where like, hell's yeah, I want you to challenge me because I don't know where my
No.
limitations are. I'm popping fences up like I know what's what. And like I want to go beyond the fences now. So kind of like you gotta show me where my glass box is because I don't want to stay in it. That's kind
Yeah.
of, the end all and be all is like, I don't want to stay in the glass box. And it's going to be uncomfortable to grow. It's going to be uncomfortable to have to break through that glass, but I can't see it sometimes without other people questioning it. And once you question it, it's like, oh, now I see where I've been holding myself back. And that's the space that I want to be in, is having people who are willing to ask me like, why is that important? Why do you need that? Why are you sitting there on that specific thing? Like
Hmm.
maybe I don't need to. Oh,
Hmm.
oh, I don't need to actually. I can just walk right over it. Thanks.
Yeah. Like you're taller than that. And you're staring at the speed bump going, see, there's a speed bump. And I'm like, right. So use your legs and take a step. Like, you can do this. I know you can. I have faith that you can push that publish button. I have faith that you can edit the email if you figure out that the email should be different. Like, and so that's where, yeah, having somebody who can recognize like that there's potential there. And like, I'm not forcing your potential on you. People who show up in these spaces, like you've done a great job of illustrating, like you do have to have a certain level of readiness to move forward. Like I wrote on the session, the version that I charge for, I'm like, only buy this if you're ready to change your life. If you don't want to change yourself and like what it is that you're doing, then you will not like this session because every ounce of living a different life is tuning something inside of yourself to be different, making a different choice. And that's that's something that we have to work our way up to until we're ready. And when we're ready, I feel like the universe gives you the thing like right on your path, that like I couldn't even articulate and ask for exactly that. And yet here it is being given to me. This universe is a magical place, man, like it can figure it out and deliver even when you're like, wait, what did I ask for? Oh, yeah, that's exactly right.
100% agreed. I do find that like the experience of the universe, just like popping things in that I didn't even realize I wanted, are just it's an exponential level of growth that I wasn't expecting. It's
Mm.
also interesting from a perspective shift. Again, this would have been like after I got off my roller coaster and started really paying attention to what was around me and wanting to be there. And you had triggered me into like I had like heard so much like gratitude and openness in the way that you were talking, and I was like, I want that. I'm not there yet. And so like it was very obvious to me where the gap was, and I had to make a conscious decision to say I'm letting go of my lower level and I'm seeking that higher level of energy vibration. Like I'm literally wanting to have those kinds of days, and I want to be open to that level of opportunity, to be able to look at something like you had been talking about your business, and you were like, and I could do this, and all of a sudden this just like bloomed into this new prospect that I'd never even considered. You had all of these opportunities. And again, that gap of like, here I am sitting in fear, and here you are seeing all of the opportunities. And I was like, that's a mindset shift away. I am one mindset shift away from it. Where do I need to alter the way I'm thinking about this to reach that? And it was a conscious letting go of the more negative fear-based mindset to say that's just literally not what I want anymore. And I was nervous about letting it go, interestingly, but it was again like the fear of letting go of the fears was like
What
it was that was a present moment for me where I was like, now we're gonna face that and do it anyway. And it really did, like it shifted into like week two, like it shifted into so much more opportunity. All of a sudden I'm paying attention to where I can make money, where there's the potential for money. Like it was just from a financial perspective, look at these things. Like I was starting to, take the action that, got me the refunds, that was doing like it was a much more opportunity based visualization of my life. I was like, look at all of this opportunity here. Look at my potential here in this moment. And so that was a defining shift, I think, too, in that first end of first week of February into the second week of February. God, I can't believe it's only been 3 weeks. I
I
don't.
know. It's freaking wild, and I've told you this many times, like that it is insane how much can change in such a short amount of time when we do stay in the same pattern, sometimes for years or decades or our whole entire life. And when you choose to let go of the version that you know, and like, come on, I'm ready for the next thing. Like, the next thing is right there. But it's kind of like, it reminds me of the trapeze, where like you're swinging on one bar and you're like, give me the other bar and then I'll let go of this one. It's like, well, how am I going to give you something into your hand that is like fisted around this fear? Like, you're not ready to grab onto something new. You're hanging on to the version that you know, you're hanging on to the fear. You like that and you're swinging, and that gets fucking boring, is what it does. Is like, I'm sick of this. I've swung here for 30 years, and okay, like maybe I'll fall. Pretty sure there's a net down there, and I'm probably gonna catch a hold of a whole nother bar that's like just right there.
Well, I think that speaks to the concept of the cycle. And in my experience, there is that opportunity while you're seeing it and you're frustrated by it. And for me, the level of frustration grows at seeing it to the point that I actually take action or do the next thing. Like, obviously, I was frustrated enough at my lower level that I was like, I want to elevate. But I think there is like a growing level of energy that you need. That frustration does need to grow. So once you actually hit the point where you're ready to break, it's like there's that burst of energy that you need to go to the next thing to make that next jump.
Right.
But if I have found in my personal life that if I don't take that jump, I get dejected, frustrated, sad with myself, and I fall back into the pattern and just let the pattern be. I kind of stop seeing it. So there
Mm-hmm.
is like the opportunity for you to make change requires that you like take advantage of that energy. If you are feeling like you're ready to move, you need to actually, say, okay, fear, I see you and I'm going to do it anyway. Because otherwise, my experience has been like I fall back into a lull again and I have to either re-energize myself or come to the conclusion that I don't want it to change enough to actually make that shift yet, like, and that might be, part of my path, that it's like it's not time for that yet. You'll come across another time where it means more to you to make that shift, or when things are in a better position for you
Right.
to make that shift. Like, I do believe everything happens in divine timing. So it's really just a matter of like, are you ready now? Are you ready to take the chance now? You feel the energy, you feel it going, like, okay, now you got to do something about it. Like, the universe doesn't just like hand things out while you're hiding in your bedroom. Like, you got to get out there. And
Yeah.
that has definitely been a shift for me too. It's like, I gotta get out there. It's time to
Mhm.
step back out into the world, communicate, network, enjoy the presence of other people, and just let the universe bring things to me through others.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I can appreciate that like there's a timing to these things, and really like what is moving forward anyway? Like on from the level you're on now to the level that's coming next. I mean, I personally think it has a lot to do with like the only reason that other levels even over there is because that's the carrot you need to heal yourself. Like it's a healing invitation, the fact that you want something different. It's an invitation to look inside and be like, all right, so what am I ready to prune back? These branches that are in my way that are like holding me hostage. Well, let's just cut that shit out of here and move forward. But not always are we ready for that. And I think, that's a symptom that like we're not done healing what's actually going on in there. Leaving behind an old level, it's not really like a physical move or like change your geographic location. It's more like shifting something inside of yourself, integrating something inside of yourself, like what we worked on with your perfectionism. And, what does it mean if it's not perfect? Like, what does that really mean? Does that mean you're terrible? You have no worth? No, not even a little bit. So like kind of a surgery to like separate your worth from your performance. And once those are separate, moving forward is no big deal, but like first the separation has to happen. So yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we land this plane?
Gosh, I feel like we've had a very comprehensive conversation about
It was
all the things.
great. It was amazing.
So I'm
Covered a
good.
lot.
We
Yeah.
we handled some stuff.
Right? It's a process. And like I said earlier, like to get to go to work and like do this work with people is just so freaking cool. So freaking cool. So, to everyone who has applied for an activation session, thank you. To those of you that we've done a session, thank you. To those of you that came on the channel to talk about your experience, thank you. I love it. And I don't even know how else to describe it other than like the greatest joy of life is in getting to give away your gifts. And so to see that some of these things, like I was telling Leigh Anne yesterday, like I've beat the hell out of myself many times for my radical honesty. And in these activation sessions, there's an outlet to be honest about, hey, here's what I see. What do you think about that? What does that bring up in you? What does that make you feel? And to see that something that I've beat myself up for so long, like to see it add value for other people, like these activation sessions have been life changing for me too. So yeah, the co-creation has been amazing.
And honestly, like your radical honesty is one of my favorite things about you. Like it's so interesting because I don't have it. And I know I think I even put that into my review survey, but the fact that you can get to the heart of a matter is so fascinating to me. It's something that I'm like watching you do and just being like, I just admire it because my life has been spent avoiding the discomfort. When someone's having an uncomfortable moment, you allow them to hide it back and you don't talk about it. So, like, it's very much a complete contrast to my life to say, actually, part of the matter is where we want to be. And that's where I want to be. Like, if I am seeing that clearly, then I absolutely want to be questioned about it. Like to me, this is again building my own level of clarity around what it is that I want and what it is that I think about things. Like how am I feeling about this? And to also then be able to give that to others, like even in the limited amount of time that I have known you and have been admiring this radical honesty concept, seeing how you ask questions and how you get to the heart of the matter. Like I've been using it with my friends to try and like spark that same level of clarity in them. How can I redirect towards the thing that's uncomfortable for you and not in a way that's going to be malicious, but in a way that's going to help you grow.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to see how you're holding yourself back. And if you decide that you still want to be there, I totally support it. You have seen it and you're like, actually, like, I'm comfortable. This feels really good and I'm enjoying my life. All right, great. I got you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, way to go, bestie.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to, and I think of one friend specifically who was going through some some struggles and just being able to listen to her and then focus on where it was that she seemed to be having pain points and say, let's focus on this. This seems to be a space for you that's causing struggle. Like, do we
Yeah.
want to continue in this struggle or do we want to alter our path?
Yeah. Like sometimes, I mean, a question like, why is that so emotional for you? Like
Yeah.
asking, like, I mean, to your point of like the heart of the matter and like really drilling into it. I mean, I feel like the more work I do on myself, the better this skill gets. Because when you ask a question like that, you got to be ready for like what the hell they're going to say, you know? And like
Mhm.
people, if you've been alive for even just a little bit of time on this planet, you have survived some really horrific things and some more than others. And the more, like we were talking about, the block is there for a reason. So the more blocked off you are, that's just telling you the ferocity of what's on the other side. So when you invite somebody to dive into their shit, are you ready to walk into their shit? Because it's going to trigger your shit every single time. You know, I cry with my people every single time they cry. It makes me go there. And I cry all the time anyway. So I'm like, yeah, bring it on. What do you got?
Same.
Let's cry those tears. Like, we
Right?
can
It's
do
kind
this.
of one
We
of my
got this.
favorite things now. Like, oh, I just feel like it feels so good to cry. It's an
It's a
entire, again,
relief.
perspective shift
Yeah.
from, a life of being told you don't show your pain, you don't show the discomfort, you put on the mask and show everything the way that it should be and all the good things. And like to be able to say, actually, tears are okay. And I would love to cry them because they reset my nervous system. They make me feel better. Like it's a good feeling. It's a connected feeling when you're crying with others. Like tears have
Yeah.
so much value.
Yeah.
And like there should be no shame around tears. Anyone's tears,
100%.
male or female, I support you in the crying because our body was designed to cry.
We need that. It's like a pressure relief valve. And I mean, I've exploded many times emotionally because I was bottling
Mhm.
things. And I don't I don't really explode anymore. But that's only because like I'm letting it out on a regular basis. And so yeah, the to be able to do that with people though has come more online as I am able to be with myself, my own pain, my own discomfort. Like it's a muscle like anything else. It can be
Yeah.
built. And yeah, so I think let's leave it there. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
place. Yeah.
I think so too.
Thank you so much. I'm
It
gonna
was
link
wonderful being
your
here and hanging out with
I'm
you.
gonna link your channel and your video in the description. You guys go check it out. Give her a like on
I
that
love
video. Tell her a
it.
great fucking job for having the courage to do it in the first place. It doesn't even matter what's in that video, okay? When I see people doing things, I think, damn, that's courageous. You know, like the people who want to
Absolutely.
criticize what we do are almost never actually doing something themselves. So, yeah, good job, Leigh Anne. We're so proud of you. We're so
Thank you, Carly.
how fun that we got to do this on the same day that you did that fun big milestone.
Right?
And yeah, so proud.
Making changes in our lives and taking that next step. I'm here for it.
I am here for it. And tomorrow at the Sacred Circle, we'll both be here for it again. So the
We
Sacred
will.
Circle happens every other Friday. The next one is February 23rd, 2024. And then you can just kind of pace it out from there, depending on when you're finding this. We have those at 10 a.m. Central Time. And if you have any questions about joining, you're welcome to email me at owningauthenticity@gmail.com. Happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, the link to join is also in the description box. So,
And we will see you tomorrow if you
yeah.
choose to join.
Yeah. We'll definitely see you tomorrow, Leigh Anne. That'll be fun.
Yes.
We'll raise our vibe, listen to some music, explore what's next. There's
Motivate
always a
ourselves to
next
hit our
thing.
next level.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'm ready for it.
We're
My
doing it.
my afternoon is completely clear so that I can take the energy with it into the rest of the day.
Right? That was a pro tip that Leigh Anne learned last time, was she was so jazzed up and then she had plans. Like after the Sacred Circle, she's like, shit, I need to have the whole day so that I can like really like work with this energy. Great idea. Great idea. So yeah, we'll
Yep.
see you tomorrow. Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, bye everybody. It was so fun.